Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome to the second episode of the Revival podcast. It's been a long time since we've done a part two. We filmed the part one and went on a bit of a break, Mufti Sahib. But alhamdulillah, today we're joined by an honorable guest, our beloved teacher, Hazrat Allama Maulana Mufti Sheikh Wajid Iqbal Sahib. Qibla, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Mufti Sahib, how are you?
Alhamdulillah.
My question first, I'm the host. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Good. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. So, it's been a while since we've done a podcast. It's been about 3 weeks, and many people did request this specific topic to be talked about. I feel as if it was just our normal team, which was me, Mustafa, Ustad Umar, and Hafiz Asad, and other people, we're all students, so we would have had a complete different perspective. But you're a teacher, you're a graduate, we're still students, so you will have a different perspective to mine. So
we're always students for life. Yes.
In that sense, yes.
We study from the cradle to the grave. So a person will always be a student. So he should never think of himself as being a teacher. He should never think of himself as being a sheikh. He should not think of himself as being above everybody else.
Right.
This is the first hurdle that a person has to get over while he's studying anything, even if it's secular sciences or if it's religious sciences.
I'll reword that then. I'll say you have more experience than me in terms of age and in terms of teaching as well. So it'd be a good different perspective to what I, as a student, or maybe I've started a few classes, so a new teacher, to someone who has a lot more experience than me in teaching. If we discuss the system, and I'm saying we're not messing around, we're getting straight into the topic. We don't need an intro. You know me, Mufti Sahib is well more known, so we don't need an introduction. So Mufti, let's get straight into it. Modern day education. The first question someone asked in modern day education was, what is modern day education? Why is education not just education? Why does it have to be modern education? My simple answer to that would be that the purpose of this podcast isn't talking about education generally, but more education in the 21st century. So we're not going to talk about how the Sahaba used to study, how the Prophet ﷺ taught them the Quran, and later down, even after that, like Imam Azam, how they would attend classes. Yeah, that's more like a long gone scenario where thousands of students of hadith would come and sit at one scholar. They'd migrate from their residences, from their own home countries to towns and cities completely across the world, just to sit and listen to one hadith. As we see in many narrations, just for one single hadith they travel. We don't do that anymore. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the modern day system, how it is now in the 21st century. So let's start off with, what do you think is modern day education? Like when I say modern day education, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
The first thing that comes to mind in the term of modern day education for me is the way it's taught. Yes.
Definitely.
So we have, in terms of secular education, from primary school, in our days there used to be a secondary school and then a high school, but in this day and age there's only a secondary school.
How old are you, Mufti Sahib, in your days?
You never ask a man's age. Is he a woman's?
Same thing.
Yes. So the issue here is that modern day education for me refers to how education is taught. Yes.
Right.
How a person is educated and the means that are used. So in the past, we may have only had one or two ways of teaching. For example, if you take the religious sciences, even in this day and age, of how they are taught inside the Madrasa, are more textual learning.
Yeah.
It's more to do with your intellect. So where you just have a book in front of you and you have to imagine it as what the author is trying to tell you. If he is trying to draw a map, you have to imagine it within your brain what the map is.
Yeah.
But modern day education is slightly far away from that. Where it's adopted that, where in class we would probably teach in a manner where there is textual methods used. Then we also have a visual method, where if we're talking about a map, the map will be drawn on the board. If it needs a graph, it has a graph. Yes. We have also learning through sounds.
Yeah.
Yes. So even though we'll do visual, but then there's also sound where you're listening to something. Yes. And there's various other ways.
So these were types of how people learn. So kinetic learner, I think they call it kinesthetic.
Yes.
one of them. Then you have the visual learner. So these are different methods.
Methods.
So when I say modern day education, your brain tells you that I'm talking about the methods of teaching.
Yes.
Why not what is taught? Like that is part of modern day education as well. The way we're teaching the things and what we're teaching as well. Like recently a book was recommended by the title Dumbing Us Down. I've personally not read it, so don't quote me on anything and don't hit me up on that. But one of my friends, he read the book and I had just asked him, what did you learn from that? What did you get from that? He goes that the author in that book, he's trying to say that in modern day education, the way things are taught, they're taught like you're always 2 years old. So in a way, everything's just spoon-fed to you. And you're taken so slowly. Like, Musab, when we read about our great scholars and we say they started learning the Quran, they did their Bismillah Khani, as we say, at the age of 4. And they were Hufaz at the age of 7 and 8. In this day, Musab, is that even fathomable? Like, can you even think someone 7 years old is going to be able to complete Hifz?
Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives tawfiq to, it can take place, and this is a matter of tawfiq. But in terms of spoon feeding, yes, this occurs. It happens in students where you keep spoon feeding them, making everything easy for them. That means they're not working.
Yeah,
Their brains are not working. They're not getting that brain training that they need.
exactly what he was trying to say. He goes, we start off like in nursery and reception. What do we do for 3 years? We're just playing. we're playing with toys and stuff, and everything that is taught. Say, for example, I think he mentioned in there like simple math equations and timetables. It takes us till year 5 and year 6 to learn them. Yes. Whereas if a student was homeschooling, he could have learned them in a year.
I mean, in terms of the education, that's a different topic altogether. So the system that we have in the UK, I can't speak for any other country, but the system that we have in the UK, there may be lots of questions. I have my own reservations on how things are done.
Right.
But because the question is modern day education, and I'm looking at it how modern education is taught. So if you look in schools, even a child just playing, a 3-year-old child, like we have a 3-year-old nursery, a child just playing with blocks or dolls or whatever it is, it actually has an impact on their learning in a positive light. That is, obviously we'll talk about how long they play for, from pre-nursery to 3-year-old, then reception, and they're still playing. So that's a different discussion altogether. I'm only talking about the method itself. Right. So, for example, people can learn and students can learn and children can learn through play. For example, when I used to teach the Qaeda classes, I used to get cutouts of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the children used to color them in. By the end of that week, they used to know at least 3 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 3 asma, at the least.
Yeah.
Now, if you do that every day, you can learn more. But at least they knew that name. And one particular class, I used to give them about 4 or 5 names every week. Throughout the week, we would repeat them. And I think by the end of the year, we knew the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Subhanallah.
But this is through like singing and playing, if you like. Activity. So, but play has a big part. Yes. Where you use word search and things like this. So when players have this big part to play, there is a learning involved in them. And maybe that's something we have to adopt in the madrasa also.
I understand that. Our brother's mentioned a good point. He's saying that nowadays, like we're saying blocks and this and colouring and stuff, but he's saying that mainly in this day and age, you're not playing with blocks, you're not playing with Lego, you're just playing online. And you're constantly on a phone or on a tablet. Do you think that helps in the learning or nurturing of the kid, or do you think it makes it worse? Online
you can still do it. For example, I'm sure the organization that you have brought out some cards.
Yeah.
Yes. And they were amazing, yes, for children to work with. So if things like this can be done, you can easily post it to your student. The literature can be posted. The games that you have can be posted to your children while the child is sat there, and you can guide him, inshallah ta'ala, of how to use those cards. And in front of you, he can use those cards, play with you. Yeah, and we're not talking about playing cards here. Not playing blackjack or things like this or poker. These are just, I think they were to do is
duas.
So how to learn the duas.
Yeah.
Yes. So they help. They help for adults.
Yeah, definitely. We've had a lot of people comment that they're as useful for me as they are for my child. So that's one thing. So that was another physical thing, which there were actual cards and using them. What about online? Like, do you think a child should be given a mobile phone or a smartphone for the purpose of education? We're not talking about them just going on playing Minecraft or Call of Duty or something like that. I'm not talking about children as in like 12, 13-year-olds. I'm talking about 7, 8-year-old kids. As a, like, I know my niece, she plays this, it's quite fascinating actually. It's a game where basically it's a doll and you got to match colors to it and you got to draw certain shapes and stuff like that. That's, I think that it's good because you're using your brain. Yeah, it's not just sitting there watching TV or something.
You know, when we discuss these type of topics in terms of phones and electrical devices or modern day technology, we have to look at it outside of a religious scope, first of all, because I've seen quite a few podcasts that talk upon this one subject, but the fundamental thing that be amongst them is in terms of religion itself.
Yeah.
So we already fathom that the child will become a great alim, Shaykhul Islam. We fathom this.
Yeah.
So therefore, then we come to the conclusion that he can't be addicted to a phone. So don't give him a phone. I mean, we're trying to say don't give him a phone at a young age. But the reality is this, look, everything has its time. I'll be hypocritical if I say right now that don't give your children any phones.
Because you're giving your children.
Why? Because I give my own. I got 4 children, so all 4 of them have their own devices, and they use them, and they use them better than me half the time. Yes, my youngest daughter can use the Samsung phone of mine better than I use it. So, and she's only 3 years old. But what I'm trying to say here is that don't ever close your own avenues. Right. In terms of education, because not every child will become a Shaykhul Islam or a big alim of the deen. There might be that one child that may have just studied the fundamentals of the religion, what we call Fardul Ain. Might study this, but what he does, he has an interest in something else. Completely something else, but you'll only recognize that something else when you allow him to explore that. But if you're always blocking his way because you want him to be on the religious side, then you will never explore that he has an interest in something. Now my youngest son, now he has an interest in phones, but he has an interest in building things. He'll dissect everything.
Bob the Builder.
If I gave him this phone, he'll open it all up and then he'll put it back together again.
Right.
Yes, he does
properly.
Properly. He does that. He likes his arts and crafts in terms of these things. If I give him a car, he'll fix it. In a toy car, he's learned how to fix it. So these are things you have to understand about your child. Which way is he going? Right. And there was a golden principle that my father used to say to me, that when I used to ask him about, should I do this, should I take this, I used to take advice. So my father used to say, if you have an interest in it, then do it. So don't just block them to what you want to live. So sometimes what happens as parents is that, because I never became a Hafiz.
I want my son to be a Hafiz.
I want my son to be a Hafiz. So what? I just force it upon him. But the reality is he might not be able to do it.
He's going to break.
He's going to break. Yes. And I tried it with my own son, but then he started to get constant nosebleeds. Wow. So then I had to stop him. But now he's doing Dars-e-Nizami with myself. Yes. He studied it nice and easy for him. But it's something that he may be interested in, he may not be interested because of his age. But later on we'll find out. Yeah. But at least we're not blocking his avenue because he's still in school and he's learning different things. Yes, he's an artist, to be fair with you. He'll draw anything for you at the young age that he's at.
Can I get a portrait, please?
He'll draw your portrait, inshallah. Yeah? And it was one of our brother Sajjad from BD7. He learned it of his son, and I don't know how old Sajjad's son is. He's actually younger than my son. Right. And he saw him drawing, so he got an idea of how to draw from him, and then he started to take it on. Yeah? So you never block this avenue. So if children are given phones, yes, everything should have its limit. You don't want the child to have a phone 8 o'clock in the morning till 2-3 o'clock at night. You don't want this to happen. Everything has a time limit, but don't prohibit them from exploring.
Yeah. So do you think that then, we always hear the negatives about giving children phones, and a brother's asking what age do you call young? I'd say like 3-4-year-olds, innit, like toddlers who don't really know what they're doing. They're just messing around, faffing around. So do you think, like, everyone always talks about the negative aspects of that giving them a device? Like, for example, they say that eyesight will go weak, or they'll become lazy. They won't be like exploring kind of kids, like crafty people that you could say, because they'd all just be always in the screen. Do you think there are benefits to that?
There are benefits to it. there are benefits, especially what they're watching or what games
Like for example,
they're playing.
you've got kids, so you can say like, if you've seen anything that your kid didn't have any idea about, and he's probably seen something.
I got 4 children, and the way my youngest daughter uses a phone or uses a tablet, yes, and the way she learns of some of the educational videos that she watches on there, she actually picks up a lot more than some of my older children.
Wow.
So it has its benefit, but if the child is using it constantly,
then it's gonna
without a break, then that will have
negative
a negative effect. Yes. So you have to. It just has to be time. You have to do your job as a parent as well.
Yeah.
That you have to time it for them. But if you just leave them on it, then yes, they'll be addicted and they'll always feel tired. Majority of children have eye bags.
Yeah,
yes.
because of
the reason for that is because they're using the phone all the time, and then majority of children where the eye bags appear from is because they have they've been using the phone. What happens is that they can't go to sleep straight away then. So they'll be tossing and turning in their beds for an hour and a half, and then they'll fall asleep. And this happens to adults when adults use the phone. Yeah. So maybe an hour, if they are using it on a night, then maybe a time needs to be set. This is the bedtime. So an hour before that, the phone is taken off them so that they can rest their eyes, they can do something else, and then maybe tie themselves up, and then when they go to bed, they fall asleep.
Tika, that's some valid points on that part of the discussion. Let's move on to more of an Islamic side of it. So, like we've just mentioned, like little kids, toddlers, you should give them phones. You should like encourage them to learn stuff, like learn it in a different way maybe, but don't ever block them. And we see this with our Asian parents especially, that we love controlling the child. And before I go on to that, let's just say, Musab, what do you think? Like, I personally have a very big difference between what a controlling parent is and what a nurturing parent is. Yeah, and there needs to be a fine line between the two, because if you're a controlling parent, you're not nurturing. You just, like you said, I didn't get to become Hafiz, you're becoming Hafiz. You're not nurturing, you're forcing them. And eventually they'll break. And we've seen that ourselves. How many students we teach young kids, we can see that they don't want to come to mosque, they don't want to do Hifz, they're just in Hifz class for the sake of being in Hifz class. And like that, then we have the actual Islamic and religious aspect of actually nurturing the child. Like the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, nurture your children. So where do you draw the fine line between a controlling parent? You're a parent, so I'm not going to say anything on this.
It's a case of the parent needs to know. Meaning he has to recognize if he's controlling or not, or nurturing. So he can't mix up the two. So the biggest illness here, I'll call it an illness, in the manner that is living your own dreams in your children. Like you were saying, I'm not Hafiz, so I want my child to be in Hafiz.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm not Alim, so I want my child to become an Alim. This, while you try to live your own dream in your own children, will break them.
Definitely.
You'll find a lot of children who, as soon as they reach the age of 18, they're distant from their parents. The reason they're distant, the reason is that because the parents have just tried to live that dream and they didn't want that dream. Common is they want their children to be a doctor.
Yeah. Zabardasti.
Yeah. Forcefully, you have to get these grades, you have to become a doctor, and he probably just wanted to become a mechanic because he had interest in it. And if he was maybe allowed to pursue that rather than just being a local mechanic, he could be working for the Formula One.
Yeah.
Yes, it can happen.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, but they never let him pursue that. So he might even become a doctor. He might even have a job as a doctor, as a GP, for example. But he's distant from he's moved away from his parents.
Yeah.
So this is the problem with this, and this is why I see a lot of scholars' children, and scholars sometimes are the biggest culprits in this, because they try to live that dream because they want their child to become a big alim.
And most of the time, that's not even because they want to be scholars, because they don't want people saying, "Okay, he's such a big scholar himself. Look at his kid, what he's doing."
Yeah. But the reality is, it's not bound to you. It's not down to you, rather.
Yeah.
It's not you making them a scholar, or what you're going to do is going to make them a scholar. It's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you have to have sincerity in it. 100%. The father of Imam Halwani was a sweet maker. Shamsul al-Halwani. His father was a sweet maker, and that's why his name is Halwani, from Halwa. So whenever you should see ulama or students of knowledge doing takrar, studying, revising their works, discussions, he would hand out free sweets to them. And they would make dua for him that his children become scholars.
Subhanallah.
And his child actually became one of the greatest Hanafis.
Shamsul Aimma.
Shamsul Aimma.
The son
Yes.
of the scholars.
The scholars, the imams. And probably one of the revivers of the Hanafi fiqh. So he became that. There was, the name skipped my mind, but another scholar who had two children. And he used to teach all day. He used to make his children sit, wait. And from the morning right down to the evening, his children used to be waiting so that their father could have a spare time so they can read their sabak to him or actually study with their own father. The father was constantly teaching other people's children.
Wow.
Throughout the whole day. And one day they complained to their father. And they said, look, we wait all day, throughout the whole morning, through to the evening, and what is it? We don't get to study. And the time you want to teach us, then we're completely shattered just by waiting. Waiting, it takes a lot, doesn't it? There you go. So therefore, what happens is that they complained. When they complained, the father said to them, it's not me who's going to make you an alim, it is their du'as. The children and their parents who came, it is their du'as that will make you scholars of this deen. So this is something that we have to understand as parents sometimes.
Definitely. So basically, we have to draw that fine line between being controlling and putting our dreams, like pushing them and shoving them into our children just because we want that satisfaction that I couldn't do it and my child did it. And you have to
understand that all children are different.
They all have
every single
own dreams. They all have their own. They might be like, we often look at people on social media and stuff and we see, oh, he's good at that, I'm not good at. And all I say to them is, you're good at something that he's not good at. You just need to find it. In the same way, a child, you might be forcing them to do something, they might not even like that. And like you mentioned, say that child does become a doctor, he's not going to be invested in it. One day or another, he's going to go to work and he's going to come back thinking, man, you know what, forget this. I can't hack it anymore, because he's not invested in that job. He's not invested in that career. So if you let them from the start decide for themselves whilst nurturing them, again, not going to another extreme where free for all, do what you want. Yeah, let them explore their dreams, let them explore their career opportunities, and then nurture them with that thing.
It's true advice, isn't it? You as a parent have to recognize what your child is for, because we're not saying that you leave it completely to the child.
Yeah.
Because the child may not know what he's going to get involved with. Let's say a teenager. He may not know that he may at the time have an interest for it, but you knowing your own child or your own son, you'll know that no, it's not for him. For example, he's going into something that has hard labor in it. But you know this person, generally my child always quits.
Yeah.
You ask him for a glass of water and normally does not even go get you it. So when you know that he's lazy in this manner, for example, then you know that he can't go into a job that has hard labor in it. Maybe he's more suited to something else. But that is through mashwara.
Yeah.
That's through seeking advice, but you knowing your child as well. Your child's interest will change. As adults, our interests change.
Yeah.
But for children, their interests will change constantly. One day he wants to be a fireman, the next day he wants to be a policeman.
Yeah.
So therefore, the interest will constantly change, but you have to know your child so that you can guide him the best way. So knowing your children and knowing their personality, this is very, very important while nurturing them.
Right. I think we've dragged too much on that part. Let's go back to more of a religious aspect. So in terms of education, keeping our broader topic, education, when should you start educating your child? Like in terms of Islamic education. You know, their modern education they'll get when they go to nursery, etc., which 4 or 5 years old they go. So in terms of Islamic education, when should you start? And then from there on, we'll go through the Madrasa and Dars-e-Nizami syllabus. We'll take it.
I recall a hadith which I used to hear from one of my teachers was that you should start teaching your children at the age of 7. Let them do as they please before the age of 7 and start teaching them at the age of 7. But hadith.
This is again not to confuse anyone, not nurturing, rather teaching them. Actual teaching,
formal teaching. Yeah. But every hadiths like this are considered by the environment. So meaning where these type of hadiths apply is considered by where you are. So if the norm is, because the Arab norm at that time was the age of 7, why? Because they were already learning informally in the desert. You know how the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spent time in the desert and learned the Arabic language and the Fusha Arabic, as it was the norm. Yes, this was the norm there, but our norm is slightly different. What's our norm? Our norm is that we send them to nursery at that point, which again it kind of brings it back to the same thing, which is what up until the age of 7 they're just playing anyway. Yes.
Yeah.
Roughly around the age of 6 they start to allow children to actually start writing.
Right.
But that's still learning, isn't it? It's not a formal type of learning. They're actually still playing majority of the day. So formal education in the UK really starts even from 6 and 7 and above. So therefore, in our UK, we could still say that we're still following in the religious aspect in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's the aspect of the age. But in terms of that, however early you start them, is good. But informally, in a playful manner, in a nurturing manner, where they pick up on things, and the children will really pick up on things.
So, like, for example, what would you say, so before formal education, like when we start actually teaching them qaida and stuff like that, before that, what should parents actually teach, or what should children actually know before they get to that? Like, would you say they should at least know?
In religious, I think the Indonesians or the Malaysians have this poem with Alif Ba Ta Sa.
Yeah.
Alif Ba Ta Sa Jim Ha Ha, and it carries on.
Right.
Why not recite that with them? We do that with ABCD, don't we?
Yeah.
And children learn it. And that's a good start, isn't it? So before they even come into the madrasa, they know Alif Ba Ta Sa. As in it's on their tongues, and they may even recall some letters. So the teacher then can work on that. But teachers, in this day and age, teachers have to, madrasa teachers especially. I'm sorry to say this, but majority of our madrasa teachers are not trained to teach.
They're not.
So for example, and they don't recognize, it's just a case, I've got a qaida and I'm just going to put it in front of you and you have to read it, and if you don't, then it's not the way forward. You have to understand, for example, myself, I'm trained to teach children with autism, yes, and dyslexia. So therefore, teachers have to train that if children
how to deal with them
and how to teach them. Yeah. So for example, children with autism, you might start with alif and he wants to start with the jim.
Exactly.
The world will turn around. That child will not move away from jim. So you have to work with how they are working with, and you have to be patient.
So before they actually come into madrasa, you'd say that the parents should go through alphabets with them, so at least to make them familiar with the sounds. They don't even need to learn the actual written form of it. Rather, even if they make themselves familiar with the sounds, anything apart from that, like what other things should parents teach kids before that regarding Islamic knowledge?
Islamic knowledge, talking about the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that they actually know of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Children will know everything else.
Yeah, that's the baffling thing.
In regards to the name of their parents, as young as 2 and 3, they know. When they start to speak, they know the names of their parents, grandparents. They know who's their cousin, who's their uncle. They know all of these things. So that means a child is capable of learning. So therefore, why not tell them stories of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We have some, prophet stories. Yes. Yeah. Why not? Books. Why not? Even the books. If they're using devices, then on YouTube.
Yeah.
So why not share these prophet stories with them, Quranic stories?
It's not really about making them learn it or teach it to them. It's just familiarize.
It's familiarizing, but this familiarizing has a great effect when they're older.
Yeah.
Yes. What happens is that whatever you teach them while they are young will stay with them for the rest of their life.
100%.
And this is the base of Aqidah. This is the base of faith, religious faith. Why? Because whatever has been taught to a child while he's young, he'll find it very hard to reject it while he's older.
Yeah.
So if you teach them that in the most respectful manner, in the nurturing manner, then it will stay with them. Yes. For example, we were taught that Jupiter is a planet.
Pluto,
sorry. Yes. Afwan.
Jupiter is still a planet.
Jupiter is still a planet. Pluto was a planet. But then we're being told it's not a planet anymore. Yes, but we're going to stick on this belief that it is a planet.
I shall argue with you, but I was taught it's still a planet.
So, it is what it is, but you have to build this in. So basically that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one.
Yeah.
Like the kalima. And explain
Very
the kalima to them. This will stay with them for the rest of their lives.
Charlie, moving on from that then, let's just do a quick recap. So before the child goes into formal education, which we'll call madrasa, we're not talking about secular education, that was just more of like an intro. Before they go into formal madrasa education, parents should try their best to teach them at least the Arabic alphabet. They should try to familiarize them with what we are as Muslims, what Islam is, what is a God, the prophets, the Sahaba. And you don't need to teach them it, rather just make it natural to them. So like you're not sitting them down and telling them, look, Allah is one, this is the Prophet. No, just keep playing it like you mentioned, like, well, make them watch YouTube videos or something like that. Or as you say, children learn best by imitating.
Look how children learn nuts.
Yeah.
In a language that they don't even understand. So, but they learn it because you've interested them in it. How have you interested them in it? You're dropping off them to school and you've got a nut playing. And it automatically... why it doesn't seem formal? It's informal.
Yeah.
For them, they're having a good time listening to the nut. So when you teach children, even the kalma tayyiba, it can be sung, can't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yes. How many children love zikr?
Because
making zikr. It's yes.
melodious.
Yes. So why not use that to teach them the kalima and then maybe talk to them about it once.
Inshallah. So that's basically before we go into formal education. Now, Sav, we might have different views on this, but it's not a masla of ijtihad, by the way. But for example, what age do you think a child should go mosque, as in formal, into madrasa? Not as in going to mosque to go with his father to pray namaz or something, but actually go into a madrasa. What age do you think a child should go? Like at the moment, we say 4 or 5, right? Yeah. Or we don't even say an age. We say as soon as he's toilet trained, you can bring him in.
My personal opinion is the age of 7.
7.
Yes. You can study younger, and there'll be bright children who can, but the reality is that children at the age of 4 or 5 years old, right, they'll be very, very slow in learning. Yeah. I'm talking about the way we teach it in madrasa right now.
Yeah.
And if you do sing-alongs, that's a different thing. If you have videos playing alif, ba, ta, sa, they learn it. That's fine. If you're teaching them that's a superb way of teaching children.
Do you think we should have that?
You should have that, yes.
In every madrasa?
In every madrasa. You should have that.
Like a kindergarten?
Like a kindergarten. You should have this, and it's the way forward. I'm only speaking in the aspect of where it's more textual learning. The qaida is given and the child has to memorize that this is alif and this is ba.
Yeah. Ratta.
Yes, ratta system. This, and what happens generally? 2 minutes before they attend the madrasa, mum and dad have said alif and ba, alif and ba, alif and ba, alif and ba. Yes. Yeah. My own child does it to me sometimes, the youngest one. He won't look at the word, he'll just go ask his mum, and his mum will tell him, and he'll come back, I know it. But obviously then you have to break it down and ask them. But if you do it in this manner, then a child at the age of 4 or 5, unless he's a bright child, average child will not be able to get through the madrasa within that year.
So you're saying 7. I'd say, and I say this to parents as well that come to my madrasa, obviously, that bring them in. And I don't say that, I tell them that this kid is not going to learn anything for 2 years. You need to remember that. He's not going to learn. I'm not going to be able to teach him the qaida in 2 years. He's still young. But I say bring him or her in for the environment. For the environment. So that when he does come in at the age of 7, he's not like, whoa, what the heck, what's going on here?
So you have to bring them in to parents first. The reason for it is that when for example, you got one family and then that parent's nephew or niece who's at a similar age, and then maybe 6 months later he or she has finished qaida, then you're going to get the blame for it.
True.
Why hasn't my son done this?
Yeah.
Why hasn't he reached the Quran yet? Yes. I just since we're adding on to this, so at that age I don't teach the Quran fully as well. So if I feel this child can read the Quran, yes, meaning I feel comfortable that he is able to read the Quran with everything that I've taught him, I will send him onto another subject straight away. Meaning, if he needs to learn the namaz book, then he'll learn the namaz book. If it's something else, then he needs to learn. But what I'll do on the same time is when he attends the madrasa, I'll tell him to sit down and maybe read a couple of pages of the Quran every single day by himself. But this is after I know that he reads good. Then he doesn't need my help, does he?
No,
Yes.
not really.
But with that, we also nurture him what? To have at least a habit to read the Quran every single day. Yes. So with this, you have to understand is I'm not taking 3 years. I don't teach Nazara classes anymore. But when I used to, I won't teach a kid Quran for 3 years. It's way too long. Where we're trying to get to the end of the Quran.
Do you never get the complaint saying, why don't you rush it? I want my kid to finish the Quran.
We always, when I started at the masjid that I serve at, this was the biggest dilemma. People couldn't get around how I was teaching the Quran because of the norm. And there was always this problem with the parents. But you have to strive hard and try to get past it. Once you show the results, then people know.
So like, for example, I personally, like, parents came to me, the kids I was teaching, they were on 1.5, 2 pages of the Quran, right? And I was appalled because they couldn't even pronounce the words properly. So I put them back to 1 line. So imagine that for a parent, from 1.5 page to 1 line. And they all started complaining. All I told them was, it's about the quality, not the quantity. And sometimes it's difficult to even explain such a basic principle to parents, where you're saying, look, it's okay. He might finish the Quran, like if you're reading 2 pages, he'll finish it in 1 year. But even after that 1 year, you're going to go around saying, oh, my kids finished the Quran. And if someone actually says, all right, go and pick it up and read it, then you're going to get embarrassed.
But we have to be sincere as well in this, like the biggest
competition.
The competition.
Like so very competitive.
It's very competitive with teachers. You can get any of my students, and I guarantee the next teacher will take mistakes out. Yes. And vice versa, if somebody came to me, and if I was in that business, then I would probably take the mistakes out. Why? Because I want to keep that child for myself.
Yeah.
And what I'll tell parents is, oh, he's made this mistake, I made that mistake. And the reality of it is, maybe the way he said it was just not your cup of tea. But the reality might be that he did read it right.
Yeah.
Or adults, even Qadis make mistakes. If you listen to some of the Qadis that recite the Quran on the stages, they make many mistakes. Sometimes they even miss the basic mistakes of ikhfa.
Yeah.
And it's hard. But is it the end of the world?
No.
It's not the end of the world. Yes. For example, some teachers might emphasize the wukuf.
Yeah.
But guess what? You only find them in the subcontinent. The only thing that that we have in the Arabs is the waqf-e-lazim.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm 1 or 2 others. But the way they emphasize in ours is like
the Jeem.
Yeah, the Jeem, and you have to definitely stop on them. Yes. It's not. The Quran is not that strict. If you come down to,
like, I grew up thinking that ta was a waqf-e-lazim. I just found out very recently it's not.
I mean, they're confusing anyway.
Yeah.
Some of them are very confusing. But all is, those wukuf are really for other aspects. They're actually related to either deriving fiqh rulings from the Quran or to derive certain beliefs from the Quran. If where the waqf is.
Yeah.
In terms of recitation, it's not a major sin if you didn't do waqf. Even when we say zalahne jali in the Quran, in terms of like you're supposed to do waqf-e-lazim, but you didn't, and then you carried on, and then your breath broke in the middle of the next verse. It's not a major sin, is it?
Yeah. In terms of qiraat.
Yeah, in terms of that, but we make it this massive big thing.
So going back to that, in terms of teaching the kids, how do we make parents understand that it's about the actual recitation of the Quran? And even after, I've been doing that for 2 years, I've been trying to make sure that, even if you're reading 1 line, 2 lines, read that properly rather than reading 4 or 5 lines. But then there's a middle path which I could take, which Hamdani Shah Sahib takes, my elder brother, which he'll teach him 5, 6 lines, but he'll say, do it gradually. So it's like the best of both worlds. You don't get the parents complaining that the kid's not learning enough. Like a balance. What's the solution? How should you actually? What's the
with parents
best
the parents that came to me and would have similar complaints that, look, nephew's gone ahead, he's nearly finished Quran and he's still on so and so spara. What I would do is just to meet them in the middle. I would only listen to 4 or 5 lines, of that child and make sure I iron out all of his mistakes, but allow him to sit and read the Quran ahead. Yes, best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Because the reality is the teacher might sometimes say that he's got this mistake and he's got that mistake, but behind the scenes the teacher doesn't have time to listen.
Yeah,
so
that's
reality.
Come
he doesn't have time to listen to the child, especially if that child is reading really, really slow. And that's another dilemma of teaching tajweed at that young age. The reality is tajweed rules should not be taught, and the letters should not be overemphasized. Because what's happening then? How is the child reading the Quran? When the letters are overemphasized in terms of the makharij, then you're constantly saying that go straight into the ha, ayn. You're saying this constantly, and children then read like this. But how it's really meant to be taught is that the child copies you just reading normally.
Yeah.
You reading
that's,
normally.
I've seen that's the best way that it works.
That way they'll get a flow. But when a child has been taught to overemphasize his makharij,
the fluency goes. Yeah.
So therefore you need to find that balance.
Like, then he'll take a break, he'll clear it, then he'll be like, Alhamdulillah. And then the fluency is gone. That's how I teach personally. Like I know people that teach like this is the makhraj of this. I don't even do that, Mufti Sahib.
The emphasis of the makhraj is for advanced students.
Yeah. I don't even tell them that this is why it's from the bottom of the throat. This that I just say you copy me. Yeah, how I do it, you do it like that, and I think that works best. And even other rules of the Quran, etc., I don't teach them like that. I say, listen to me, I read, and I think that I'm not saying as in a like prideful or boastful way, but most teachers are even lazy to do that. Yes. Like I never ever give any student sabak saying, all right, you finished it here, now learn till the next page this ayah. I read it to them, and sometimes teachers are lazy to even do that. Like read the sabak, the coming sabak to the
I would only
child.
do that with the child I feel comfortable, that I know he can learn it on his own accord.
Yeah, obviously.
But a child who doesn't, who needs help, then we would read the next verse for them, or the few verses that are there. We'll read them, and they will repeat it. Then they will go back and learn it for themselves, and then have another test.
Yes. So that's the Quran aspect of it. What about in terms of kalme, dua, surahs and stuff like that? How do you go about teaching them? Then I'll say how I do it.
You're making me go a while back to think how I was teaching it now. So when I was teaching,
we're slowly building up. So we've come from toddlers to this, and then we're moving on to Dars-e-Nizami. Just for the viewers, they might be thinking, what are these mullahs doing talking about Nazara? We want them to talk about Dars-e-Nizami. We're getting there slowly.
So in terms of how the namaz book, yes, namaz book is a memory, but you have to really understand what age level that you're teaching, the child's age. You have to really consider it. You can't give a namaz book to a 5-year-old and say, go learn it. He can't read it. So you have two options. Either you do takrar with them, as in you say it and they repeat it, and they learn it in this manner. That's for the namaz and du'as. The elder students may be able to learn it straight away. But as for anything else, I won't mention the books we'll use because it might cause a bit of an issue, which we used to use at that time. And that was by the organization that I was working for.
Yes.
And that was the syllabus. But it worked well. And that was activities. So if you had something in Aqidah, basic Aqidah for children, and the books were actually made in a way where they were through the ages.
Right.
So if you had book one that was for children, so therefore if it was about Aqidah, it would be stories or something about Aqidah which they can relate to, and like that you go through that syllabus. But you talk to them. But a lot of teachers only know one dimension teaching. You know how we spoke on visual learning and things like this. They only know one. Sit the child in front of you and one-to-one and give them the textbook. That's it. No, you have to do various things. Yes. If you're giving something to a child, maybe use the board with it so you can see as well. You explaining it. Now we have TVs and smartphones and things like this, more interactive stuff. So you can use that. In JTI Victor Street, I used to use the interactive board. We had Sheikh Salim Naqshbandi, who used to use the interactive board also. So you can use these variety of things to help make them learn. Yeah, use videos, like we said earlier on, to any subject that you have, even fiqh. Yes. For example, some of the brothers, I'm not sure who they were, used to have Hanafi Salah mistakes. Right. Yes. And they made basic short videos where they were showing by
the common mistakes we make in
that
namaz.
person has, right? So, and those videos worked wonders, for children that were learning how to read salah,
Yeah.
especially at the age of 10, 11. It worked wonders for them because they visually see it. When you try to explain it,
It's difficult.
they sometimes, because of the schooling system that we have, because they use all these methods of learning. So therefore, when you do it in the madrasa, they'll easily pick up on it.
Yeah.
So you have to adopt that, and teachers have to do that.
Definitely. So that's in terms of namaz and du'as and namaz specifically. In terms of du'as and kalima, say, like, that's something which is very, very stressed in our Asian community in madrasa.
I won't say that it shouldn't be taught.
I don't think that it should be. I'm not saying get rid of the syllabus.
I'm just giving my own personal view, where it's a case of that. I won't say that it shouldn't be taught, but I would say that it should be taught but not emphasized. If the reality is, if I teach it to a child even at the age of 10, 11, all the way to 15 and 16, I don't expect him to know it the next week. So if I taught him now and he's memorized it, I know for a fact that when he comes a week later, he still won't know it. He may have memorized it, read it to me, but is he going to read it every single day? I mean, our grandparents used to tell us to read the whole sixth Kalimas before we went to bed. So that's a different thing. I mean, if you do that, that's a good
some
thing.
Parents do
I had one child who came once, right? He knew all the imaniyat,
Right.
Mufassal and Mujmal. He knew all the 6 Kalimas as well. And he knew a certain number of du'as and a portion of Surah Yasin. But he did not know how to read the Quran, Arabic. He didn't know what alif was. But how did that take place? You know how? His mother was just at night reciting them to him. His mom was just reciting them to him on a night, and he learned all of them.
Wow.
So when he came to the madrasa, I think it was about 6 or 7, 6.5 he came, to me. And his mom said, listen to all of this from him. So I listened to him.
Similar
His tajweed may not have been the best, but I'm just making a point.
Yeah.
Yes, it may not have been the best recitation, but the reality was he learned something. So therefore, these things should be learned, but they should not be overemphasized. Yes.
And
they're not necessary for nikah.
I was going to say, my personal experience with this, you've probably done well more nikahs than me. I'm on probably like count number 4 here, that we spend all these years and we still do it. Like, I'd say I'm part of the problem as well at the moment. I'm trying to get rid of it, but I'm part of the problem where every week I just have to sit and listen to the Kalimas, because the parents will come and they'll just complain, oh, he's forgot his Kalimas, please listen to him again. And I can't say, no, he doesn't need to know. They're going to be like, what? 40 saal se to we've been learning our kalmas and you're saying you don't need to know them anymore. What new religion is this? So I just have to listen to them. And the sad thing is that we spend 15 years teaching them kalmas and stuff, and then, like you just mentioned, when it comes to nikah and the Imam Sam's there telling,
they don't know,
they can't even repeat after you. Forget knowing them, they can't even repeat after you. So do you think that we've just completely wasted about 15 years of their life?
The kalimas has a different purpose.
What's that?
The kalimas are not there for nikah. Okay. For example, if I was to do somebody's nikah,
I'm not saying it's there for nikah. I'm saying
that.
If you've spent that many years teaching them and you've studied them for so long,
Yeah.
how can you not know
them? But it happens, people won't concentrate on them, but they've been forced again, haven't they?
Yeah.
So when they gain that freedom, then they're not going to look at them. But the reality of those kalimas is they serve as a different purpose. And that is Sunnah of the Prophet, because most of those kalimas are du'as.
Yeah.
Or praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like the 4th kalma, if you pick up Kitab al-Azkar, yes, very rarely you'll find Imam Nawawi not placing in a chapter. So you're understanding from this that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite it throughout the whole day. So this is the purpose of it. The 3rd kalma, when you're making tawaf, just keep reciting it.
Yeah.
So it serves like a purpose like this.
As well.
Yes, Salatul Tasbih. So it serves a purpose like this, that if you know them,
whenever people ask, what's the best way to make istighfar, man, you've been learning it since you were 5. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin.
So that's why it serves that purpose. Yeah. But where we put it, he needs to know this kalmah because at this age he's going to get married. Yes. And then they get somebody like me who comes to do the nikah, ijab and kabul, and that's it.
That's it.
Yes.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet, that's it.
Have the langar go.
That's it. And methods of doing nikah are changing, because the majority method that we have in this day and age is nikah fuzuli, isn't it?
Which one?
Which is I just walk out into the street and get you married to somebody, right? And then I take your approval and take her approval, and that's it. You're married. So I just walk out of you and say, Samdani Shasa wants to marry you.
Yeah.
She says yes, but you have no knowledge of it. I come back to you, and that's what. And then you agree to it. You're married. That's nikah fuduli, isn't it? Majority of the methods that's followed is this. This is nikah fuduli. Majority of the imams that do nikah are doing this nikah fuduli. So it's something to know. That's a fiqh topic. That's a different
Q&A
topic
for next week. Keep that in mind. Acha, moving on from that, the kalme and dua stuff. So now, say that child, he's got his Quran on point. Now he's got his kalmas, his duas, etc. Islamic studies. When does a child, or when should a child's journey begin into like aqidah, seerah, fiqh, and stuff like that? And Musab, this isn't a Q&A. You should be asking me questions as well.
You can answer that now.
I'll pass.
Look, the Aqidah will start straight away, but you have to understand that there's one Dars-e-Nizami, and then there's one Islamic studies.
Right.
For me, I feel that Islamic studies should be taught in more or less like a youth work way, if that makes sense.
Right.
Where you're more friendly with them.
Okay.
Less of formal education.
More informal again.
More informal. More of knowing the children and their problems. So, for example, when I used to do the 2-year Islamic studies courses, these were worked around the children, where they were in a place where they came from different backgrounds, but the children, if I tell you the story about it, the masjid that I work at, when I set up this course, I only set up for 2 children that I had.
Right.
Because I wanted to move from Nazara classes to Islamic studies. And from those Nazara classes, I only had 2 children that I wanted to teach the specific age.
Okay.
And what I did was that we advertised it, and 1 or 2 children were coming in through that. But the majority of the children in that class, because I capped it, I only wanted 15, 16 children in that class. So majority of them were standing at the street corner smoking.
Allah.
We call it the red shop, Victor Street Masjid. They were standing there smoking. And I called them from there and I brought them into masjid. And anybody can come to JTI Masjid, Victor Street today. Those children, whenever they are in the local area, they will attend the masjid to read the salah. Yes? Wow. They did that 2-year course. But that 2-year course was all of their problems that they had. From down to the street level, down to education, down to wherever you want to take it, we spoke about it. The personal issues that they had, we spoke about it. We went through the tafsir of the Quran. But the way I taught the tafsir of the Quran was not in terms of going, not like Jalalain. Yes, it was in relating it to them and delving into their problems that they have.
Yeah.
And like that they understood and they knew the purpose of life. But one thing that always got emphasized in those type of courses was, look, you are going to go AWOL at some point. Because you have that mentality.
Yeah.
I know that you might be 18 right now, 17, 18 right now, but by the time you're 20, 21, in that period, you might go off somewhere and do whatever. But realize that this is the basic that you need to know.
No.
Yes.
At all times.
Because I used to see men coming to me in the masjid and asking me basic questions about namaz. And this is see that shame on that person's face. He's being felt ashamed, that embarrassed that I'm asking the imam, look at my age. I'm asking him some lot older than me. So the children used to see that. So I used to say to them that, look, do you want to be that person? Do you want to be in that position? So they would learn whatever they had to learn. But now, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are in a position where they come to the masjid and they pray salah. Their father is not chasing them, their mother is not chasing them, and I'm not chasing them. They're actually doing it on their own accord. Because I don't expect them to become alims of the deen. I'm not expecting that from them. I'm expecting them just to be normal people, righteous people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the
ups and downs will happen. People make mistakes.
Definitely.
And they just have to learn from this mistakes, not to do those mistakes again. This is what we have to teach the Islamic studies courses like.
So,
but how would you teach it, Shah?
Oh, finally you've asked a question directed at me. I'd say I completely agree with you. Like in our madrasas at the moment, the way the kids get taught this Islamic studies is very formal again. Textbook, read it, memorize it, maybe there's activities or exercises, do that. Next week I'm going to listen to you, and you better know the answer. So that way isn't going to work, because like even now I'm teaching like my kids some fiqh. Like there's got to be a time where you have to teach certain things. Like for example, ghusl and wudu. Right, you're gonna inevitably you have to teach that.
Yes.
Otherwise, the child's gonna grow up not even knowing how to do ghusl and wudu. So you have to teach that. But when you're keeping all your concentration on just them things, like my kids, and I'm sure your kids ask stuff like, "Shahsab, am I allowed to have a girlfriend?" Like they're not that old, they're not that young. They're like 14 years old.
If I was to tell you what we discussed in the Dars-e-Nizami on live,
right,
I think we'll have to cut it off.
Okay,
right?
so we better not discuss that.
I tell you the truth, I'm really open with my children. Some of the students that I teach, and I tell all the parents that I'm open with the children, that they can ask me anything in class. There's nothing that they can't ask me. There's nothing prohibited. No discussion is prohibited in my Dars-e-Nizami class. When I'm talking about my Dars-e-Nizami class, I'm talking about my junior Dars-e-Nizami class.
The one that you teach,
which is the youngest is 9 years old.
Wow.
Yes. So and they're both, yes, and some are 10, some are 11, some are 12. Yes. Now we have a question answer session, more or less at the end of every session. But in that they can ask anything that they want.
And kids love to ask questions.
And the kids love to ask questions. But we'll discuss anything. Yes. There's no.
And you have to, as a teacher,
yes,
you have to give them a platform like that where, Chalo, don't do it every day. Yes. Because like, again, Mustaf, if you start doing that every day, your whole week's going to just go on question
and answer. It does, but for us, it ends up on jinns and it ends up on the Day of Judgment. So these are
the most important topics.
Yeah. But as a teacher, you have to understand that, look, even
you have to give them what
there might be
they're interested in.
So there might be a 16-year-old kid who's interested in that, like he wants you to describe hell, but you have to understand that I've got a 9-year-old there as well. So therefore, you just balance it.
Yeah.
Yes, but you don't scare him you don't want a 9-year-old to be scared so much that he just
to go sleep at night.
Yes. So you have to balance everything.
100%. So you have that again, going back to what you mentioned, that Islamic studies, it should be taught in more of an informal manner, but even then making sure that, say, when that year is over for them, they know the foundations at least. So don't completely disregard them kind of things, but keep a balance of it. So give them stuff that they're interested in, as well as giving them that they need to learn certain things. So Musab, according to you, or in your opinion, at the age where the child usually leaves madrasa right now, like I personally left 16, I went to India after that. I don't know how long you were in the madrasa for, but normally when I was in mosque, kids still used to come mosque like when they used to go college. Yeah, not all of them, but a few of them. But now the kids will leave madrasa at the age of 13, 14, 15 max. I don't really see any 16-year-olds coming.
The reason for it is because we don't have anything after finishing Quran. So when children, I'm not saying all madrasas, but many madrasas only teach the Quran and Namaz book, and then because then
Kalimas for 15 years.
15 years, or they may have like a basic set of Islamic studies within the Nazara classes themselves. Now what happens when that child reaches that age? They don't have anywhere to send him. So what they just say, Allah Hafiz to him, and then he goes on his way. But where is he going to end up? He's going to end up on the streets.
Exactly.
Yes. I used to have a policy in the Islamic studies, not now because I'm teaching Dars-e-Nizami classes, but in the Islamic studies classes, I never used to throw anybody out. No one ever got expelled. Rather, I used to take children who have been thrown out of other masjids. Yes. And that was the speciality of that class. I taught that for 4 years. So 2 different courses. I set a course for 2 years each.
So what did you used to teach them then at that age?
Everything that you can get your hands on.
Yeah, anything and everything.
But in an informal manner.
Right.
In a truly informal manner.
Do you think that worked for the kids though?
It did work for the kids because I see it every day. Because they're there.
So like you'd say now they've gone and they know how to do wuzu, they know how to do ghusl, they know how to pray namaz.
They know how to do that. Yes. They will forget certain things. I don't expect them to know everything. But they know the basics. They'll know the basics. Some of them are now 20, they're in uni and they know everything.
I could counter that, and I'm sure many people watching, they would counter that argument saying, at the age of 15, 16, you've been studying since what? You went to mosque at 6 or 7. You've been in madrasa for a good 10 years, say. You're coming out by just about knowing how to do wuzu and just about knowing how to pray namaz. Is that good enough?
It's not good enough. It's not good enough. That's the reality. But you have to they will know everything else. Like for example, in those courses, we actually did Aqidah Tahawiyya.
Like keeping
Yes.
in mind, we have 15, 16,
Yes.
year 10, year 11. These kids have studied English, math, science,
Yes.
all daft subjects.
But
They've gone
you
through
know
that.
what we're looking
But
at
they come
is
out of mosque, all they know is how
what
to pray namaz.
I said to you in the beginning was, when you make that idea that they're going to be alims of the deen and they need to know it constantly, yes, that's what caused the problem here of understanding. You have to understand that these people will learn it, but they will forget it. You can for those children that I've taught Aqidah Tahawiyya to in those lessons, they learnt it. But if I go to them now and say, do you remember learning this? He might not remember. Because he's in the dunya, isn't he?
Yeah.
But at least he knows his basic creed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, and I follow the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam.
Oh, 100% agree with that. That's
Yes.
better than nothing.
Yes.
At least them knowing that is better than nothing.
It's the purpose, isn't it? You have to understand what the ability of that child is. He may even have a greater ability, maybe even to become a scholar. But when he does not want to become a scholar, you can't force it upon him, can you?
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to understand in this scenario is that these basic things will go far. You know, basic creeds, you don't expect them to remember everything, but at least they recall something, that even when they sat in a majlis somewhere and you're making a speech, Asab, and you mention an Aqidah point to them, at least he click in. How many times have we been to the Dars-e-Nizami course and our teachers say to us that, look, at least you've heard it. The second time you hear it again, you'll understand it.
Yeah. Like kulli mushakkil.
Yeah, kulli.
That's 100%. That does the job for us.
We'll leave that topic to the side.
Right, so then again, Musa, like, take away what we're living in an ideal scenario. At the age of 15, I think that once a child leaves mosque at the age of 15, I think he should be able to read the Quran. Agreed? Let me know when you start disagreeing.
Agreed.
Yeah?
Agreed.
Should be able to read the Quran, not like a qari, but good enough that his namaz counts, at least to that level. And I just mentioned this last Jummah, that you don't need to know the Quran like Qari Abdul Basit. Yeah, you need to know it just so your namaz is fine and your tajweed rules are in place. That's how much they should know the Quran. They should know their basic daily du'as. And again, they're not compulsory, they're not farz or wajib. It's sunnah things that we have to teach our children. So then when they grow up, at least they know what the dua to read, to go in the toilet, etc. and stuff like that. It's a good thing. They should know that. They should know how to do wudu, how to do ghusl, and how to read namaz. All of that. Apart from that, would you say, how much would you say, I'll ask you first, how much would you say a kid should know in terms of aqidah at the age of 15? How much should they know? Like, obviously, we have read Shara Qaid and stuff like that. Obviously, they're not going to know that, but at what level should their aqidah be?
Look, in one of the question and answer sessions, I made a difference between ilm al-kalam and aqidah.
Right. So Shara Qaid is ilm al-kalam, not aqidah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, meaning ilm al-kalam is more logical,
Right.
more bound to...
So aqidah tahawiyya is aqidah.
Aqidah, yes.
Yeah.
So
Statements.
You just need to teach our children statements of belief, that's it.
But then again, this 15-year-old kid's going to go out, he's going to go college. An atheist going to ask him, he's going to be like, all I was taught is God is one, that's it. That's all I know. I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know any answer to any objection. I just know he's one. Is that good?
It can be discussed. So if I'm looking at in a broad sense, so I'm looking at trying to cover all of the children.
Right.
Yes, from 10
I'm
to 15.
talking not 10 to 15, just say he's left mosque now.
Yes. No, at the age of 15, if a child was at the age of 15, I will go into detail with him. I won't teach him Aqidah per se formally.
Yeah.
But just as a conversation,
clarify certain common objections and misconceptions.
Yes, you can do that. For example, we with the Islamic studies, we used to do Sheikh Ahmad Didat videos.
Yeah.
Yes, they used to watch them and they used to learn from them. And we used to pick up on certain things that he said and then try to... I used to have the Bible there with us. So they used to open it, read it, check it. Now let's see what the Quran says. They used to check it. So they used to practically do these type of things.
So you made a munazir then?
Meaning it's just understanding the age.
Yeah.
Yes. You have to understand that. But the reason I'm trying to make it all-inclusive is because majority of our classes are mixed. Yeah, so you'll find the Islamic studies class and mixed as in age, not in terms of gender. Is that the Madrasa-e-Nizami class is from 9 till onwards, right? Yeah. So then it's sometimes hard for that 9-year-old to understand.
Yeah.
So therefore, as a teacher, either you answer in two ways, and that is what you answer in a higher level, and then you answer in a lower level, so that it's all inclusive, isn't it?
Again, then, Mufti, like one thing I always get, I speak to my friends in Bolton, and not saying it boastfully or pridefully, but the reality is reality. Me and you are experienced teachers. We know how to teach. Not in a normal madrasa, the type of teachers you have, they don't know what they're talking about themselves.
This is the
So
hardest thing.
how does that work?
I
for
know
them?
we probably become madrasa reformists. So the issue with some of the madrasa teachers is, for example, myself.
Again, we're not going slandering anyone. We critiquing
Allah
the system. Allah bless them. 100%. They give their time, they give their effort, and they do whatever.
And some
they
of
do.
the wages they get are not even worth
100%.
the time that they are spending there.
You'd rather work in a takeaway.
So what I was trying to say was that some of the teachers, they have to be able to adapt. Yes. Yeah. So you only get certain teachers that'll come and they only know one way. You got a qaida and I need to listen to it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the problems that I came across with other teachers was that if I was to say to a teacher, look, you need to teach a part of a seerah, part of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't know how to teach it. So what happened? Majority of the teachers say, okay, here's the book, you read it, and once he's read it, that's it, we're done. No. Why not just give them a lecture?
Yeah. Talk to them about it. Not even a lecture. Yeah. Just talk.
So for example, I'm that type of teacher. If somebody said to me, "Oh, you need to teach this part," I'll probably just stand up and start talking about it straight away. And that's just me. Yes. That's how some of my teachers used to teach, off the cuff, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. One of my teachers, Mufti Wajid Sahib, I studied certain books from him, and we used to sit with the books without even looking at them before. And I say, "No, you need to adapt to this."
Yeah.
Yes. It's just a different style. Why?
You've got more flexibility than.
He used to say, I'm not gonna spend 2 hours researching this book and then come to you for another 2 hours. Yes, just to only teach you. Yes. So I mean, that's a different way of looking at it. But you should be able to do that. That if you need to teach something or something spontaneous sometimes for the children.
Yeah.
Yes, not that they're always in the same environment and doing the same thing every single day and they're just bored to death. Yeah. You should be able to do something spontaneous for them.
Why kids leave the mosque, because it's just repetitive. Exactly every day we come in.
I tell you the truth, I as a teacher got so tired of doing the same thing. So I do different things, for me to stay interested in what I'm teaching.
That's what I did.
Other than the Dars-e-Nizami, because that's more particular, isn't it? That's something that my teacher has trained me in doing. But as for like Qaida Quran, I always had to do something different with the children. Otherwise, I used to get bored myself. Yeah? And you'll understand, because I went from Qaida to Quran, I went to a Hifz. I'm not Hafiz myself, but I taught Hifz as well. Yes? So I went from Hifz, and then I went to Islamic studies, and then I went to Dars-e-Nizami like that.
Right, interesting. So, the crux of it is, in terms of when a child's left, say at the age of 15, he should know a bit of everything. Yeah? Not in a manner where he can now class himself as a scholar or anything, but you should teach them everything, a bit of everything.
You should know a bit of everything, that if he sat in a gathering of yours,
he can have a conversation.
Be able to have a conversation with you or pick up on things that you are saying. Yes? Yeah. But at the same time...
Like for example, if I'm saying a certain thing is fard,
yes,
he shouldn't think, what's a fard, what's this? So at least the basic terminology, certain things like that. If you teach them that by that age, then once they grow up and they're elder, now they're listening to talks or speeches, or listening, like for example, someone's listening to mine and your conversation, sometimes we use certain terminology, like this is wajib, sunnah, ghair mu'akkada, and that guy's saying that, what's a sunnah, ghair mu'akkada, what does that mean? So at least at the age of 15, they should be familiar with these terms and certain things, and then inshallah slowly thereafter they can now build on that. So now the child's left masjid, now he either goes into the secular side of it, which no harm at all going into that side, agreed? Okay. No harm going into that side. Our topic now is the darsi side of it. So now the child's at the age of 16, he's left school, he's gone into Dars-e-Nizami now. So now our main topic is...
He's 16 and he's left school.
Yeah, he's finished year 11.
Now,
like me.
I have my own personal reservations on this. So all of my students, when they ask me this question that I want to leave just to do Dars-e-Nizami full time, and I'm only speaking of the UK here. I'm not sure of the situation of any other country. For the UK, I always tell my students at least do your A levels.
What's up? Why did you not give me this advice? I'm regretting it right now.
I always say to students, all of my students that do your A levels.
100%.
At least do your A levels and then consider, keep studying. If I tell you the truth, majority of the full-time courses, and you might agree with this, majority of the full-time courses in the UK are really part-time. In the amount of hours that
100%.
the teachers are teaching you.
Yeah.
The amount of hours the teachers are teaching you, the rest of the day you just sat around. So therefore, looking at the current climate in the UK, I would say, no, carry on till at least A levels. Then at least you get a broad sense of, of my interest in going forward, am I not?
Exactly.
Should I go to uni or not? At least you have...
so your advice basically would be don't drop out.
Yeah, I would even say go to uni and make sure you do your uni as well. But
I'd say, like, from my personal experience, I went straight after year 11. Yeah. I was always going to go, to be honest. But after year 11, I'd say get your A levels, because right now, me and my elder brother Hamdan, he did go college, but I didn't. Now if I want to do a degree in Islamic studies or something, that's the only thing I'd probably do, or religion and ethics or something like that, or even philosophy. If I want to do a degree in that, I don't have A levels. But if I did go to college and forever, whatever I did, electronics or something like that, like Hamdan we did electronics, if you did something like that, at least you've got the A levels. So now say 10 years down the line, or even 15 years down the line, you've become an alama to dahr, you've done everything. Now you want to do a degree or a PhD in something. Now you're looking back, I should have done some A levels because now I can't get into any uni. So my advice, I say you agree as well, is at least do the A levels. Chalo, uni is one of them things you can do that whenever. 20 years down the line, you feel like going to uni, you can go to uni. But the A levels, that's going to get difficult for you. I'm sure you still can. You can do online A levels.
You can still do your A levels
and stuff like that. It's a lot more difficult. It's a lot more difficult than going back to uni at the age of 30, 40, because there are people there.
You have to fathom in what your life will be like at that time when you do go back. And times change. When I went into Dars-e-Nizami full time with my Ustad Mufti Fazil Sahib, I was thinking about it for like 3 or 4 weeks constantly. I was in uni, I was doing marketing. It wasn't the course that I wanted to do, but I was in my second year at the time. And I was in a dilemma. I've only got 1 more year to do. Should I finish it? Should I not? But I'm thinking, what am I going to do with it? The actual course I wanted to get to was into software engineering.
Right.
But for some reason that didn't go to as planned. So therefore I ended up in Huddersfield Uni doing marketing. But in the second year I made my decision, spoke to my father. My father was happy with it. Yes, if you want to do this, go for it. I went into full time Dars-e-Nizami. But as the years passed, I managed to get a scholarship with Bradford Uni for software engineering.
Wow.
But guess what? After all those years of being in a madrasa and going back into the uni, I just couldn't handle the environment.
Yeah.
Yes, it was not something for me. Every penny that they gave me for the scholarship, I handed it back. I only lasted 1 week. Yes, so you have to fathom all of that then as well.
Yeah.
You have to take all of this into consideration, that you as a person might change as well.
Yeah.
Because
you've lived in a system or an environment completely different to one that you might have to go into.
If I tell you how I did it, I was more or less secluded from everything. So when I was studying with Ustad Sahib, Mufti Fazil Sahib, from day to night, I was secluded from everything. I used to have my builder phone, those Nokia builder phones. I used to have one of them. I only bought a smartphone when I met Sidi Naveed. I wasn't into smartphones. So after a long time, they had been out for ages and I still didn't have a smartphone. I was completely secluded. Yes, just engrossed with what Ustaz was doing and teachings.
Wouldn't that...
Someone
harmful. Would say that's a bit extreme.
It is a bit extreme. But that's just me, isn't it? Right? It is extreme and I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. Because you could reach a level where you go to a corner shop and you don't know how to pay the person because you're so secluded that you haven't been to the shop.
Yeah.
Yes. So you don't do that. I wouldn't advise that on anybody.
So that's you personally. Like, for example, if I was to do that, I'd probably start whacking my head in the wall.
Yes.
Because I'm a really social guy. I need to speak to people. I need to see people. And if we advise that to someone, then it might work for certain people, like someone who's of your personality. It worked for them. It did wonders.
For me, it just happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I planned it to happen for me to be secluded. It just happened. It's just how my life planned out. Yes, but intention to do it, I wouldn't advise that for anybody. Right. It's not
so
way forward.
Before we go on to the Dars-e-Nizami, Musab, what is Dars-e-Nizami? Like, there's a big confusion. I think some of our audience would agree over here that a big confusion between Islamic studies and Dars-e-Nizami. I define it and you define it. I define it as Islamic studies is your fard ulum. Dars-e-Nizami is something completely different.
So, when I said to you, I teach Islamic studies in informal manner and in manner of youth work. I'm basically just teaching Fardul Ain.
Right.
Yes. Everything that Fardul Ain includes in it, with giving them life lessons. So, for example, in that I would teach certain things as life lessons. So, for me, when we teach children, I say always keep it informal. Why? Because the Quran is a life lesson. For a person who's going to become an alim, that's a different thing. For him, is a skill. For us, for just people who generally read the Quran, it's a life skill, isn't it? It's something that needs to be with him throughout his whole life, that he can turn to and read the Quran. So, it's fard. I agree with you that when you say it's fard ulum, and Dars-e-Nizami is just built on top of that, then, isn't it?
Okay, so Islamic studies is your fard ulum. What is Dars-e-Nizami? You made the syllabus, and why do we?
I'll let you
so
answer
much?
that, Shah.
I'm not answering this, Mufti Sahib.
Go
This
for
is
it,
your
Shah.
question. You're a Mufti. This is your responsibility. Tell people what Dars-e-Nizami is.
A Mufti doesn't know how to answer every question. We're Mufti ne Mufti.
So, what is Dars-e-Nizami? How did it come about?
Dars-e-Nizami is just a syllabus. Yes, and for some reason people take it to be gospel.
That's
it's not like that. You can add to it. There's nothing wrong with adding books to it or taking books out for that matter. But just to say that this, the person who made the Dars-e-Nizami syllabus is named after him as well, isn't it? Right? Yes, I believe so. So therefore, he laid the foundations down for it. But he saw a need of that time.
Yeah.
Yes. But it should also tell you that the very same Dars-e-Nizami syllabus is telling you that what should be taught inside a madrasa as Dars-e-Nizami should be in line with what sciences are taught in that era.
Yeah.
Yes. So, for example, why aren't we teaching? I mean, we do in MEMSI, but why don't we teach children science?
We should
in the madrasa. We don't, do we? And various other subjects that we do. Geography, we don't even teach geography anymore in madrasa.
Don't even teach history
properly. Yes. No one teaches seerah.
Yeah, they don't.
Have you seen syllabuses where they teach seerah? Not have we. So you have to pick up on these type of things. Especially for some reason we make a massive difference. This is secular and this is this. No. You understand from the foundations of Dars-e-Nizami that he was trying to just put every science which was relatable in that age.
To make not a scholar who can live in that day and age.
Yes.
So you cover this syllabus, and in this day and age you'll survive.
Yes.
You'll have the basic aspects of all the knowledge where you can survive and you can preach or whatever you need to do. In our day and age, Dars-e-Nizami it's like, as you mentioned, it's like gospel. Are you a scholar? Have you done Dars-e-Nizami? You go in the Arab world and ask someone, have you done this? What's one of them? So to clarify that, Dars-e-Nizami, again, Musab, I have to look at you because you're saying in front of you. I'm not teaching you. You already know. I'm saying this for the audience, yeah? That Dars-e-Nizami is a syllabus which was made by a subcontinent scholar. Bearing in mind, that was for his age again. So he put together a number of books in certain topics which he felt were enough for someone to go through the syllabus and survive in that day and age as a scholar, preach and educate the people. Now that Dars-e-Nizami system and the syllabus has been passed down throughout the years. In India, in Pakistan, in UK, and in other countries where people from the subcontinent have settled, and we call them madrasas, who teach the Dars-e-Nizami syllabus. The syllabus itself isn't gospel, like you mentioned, that if Allama Sialvi put these books in it, if you don't read that book, then you've not done Dars-e-Nizami. Yeah.
The reality is, even the people that are saying that the Dars-e-Nizami, the syllabus is there, scholars later added to it. The books that we actually have now
is not the original.
They're not the original.
Yeah.
So it's something to understand.
It's changed throughout the years, and there's a lot of factors that played it.
I've added English.
You've added English.
I've added English grammar into the Dars-e-Nizami
in
course.
Pakistan as well. Yeah, I can't speak for Pakistan, but in India, in like, for example, Al-Jamiat al-Shafiya and other madrasas, they'd call them Islamic schools where they teach Dars-e-Nizami. They made it compulsory to know English, and they teach maths as well. Because in reality, these two very important sciences that they believed that even if you're a scholar, you have nothing got to do with, you didn't go to school, you didn't go to college, but these sciences are very important. You should know them. So the syllabus that was originally made has changed throughout the years. My question now to you, Mufti Saab, again, it's not a Q&A, I'm having a conversation, that do you think the syllabus that is, the thing is, there's not even a unified syllabus, is there? Everyone teaches their own version. Do you think it's too watered down? That's a question a brother's asked, and he wants me to talk about this in detail.
Okay.
Do you think it's watered down so much where it's more like, it's watered down for a marketing point of view? Like, do it in 3 years, come on, become a scholar. Dude, only 3 years. And some of them, like, do it in a few months.
Some of my children will be watching. Some of the children in my class will be watching, and they'll be laughing at this now, because the first day they came, I said, I've advertised it for 3 years, you're here for 8 years.
I dropped it on day one.
Day one, right? The 3 was just to bring you in, right? But alhamdulillah, they made a pledge that they will study as far as they can, inshallah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them all alims of this deen. There's like literally 22 children in that class. Yes. So and inshallah they work hard, and they become alims of the deen, at least righteous people, if not alims of the deen. Yes. So the thing here is that
too watered down.
It just depends on the organization and what the purpose is. So you don't, sometimes the Dars-e-Nizami course is, the purpose of the organization might not be to make alims, but it's just to...
Why call it Dars-e-Nizami then? That's the objection.
Marketing skills, aren't they? So to the person studying...
Deception! That is deception!
To the person studying it, he thinks that he's becoming an alim. But even the alim course, in not comparing it to secular education, but in the realm of Islam, in this ummah, even though we might say in Pakistan is worth masters, yes,
right.
The reality in the Islamic sense is that it's just a foundation for you, is your GCSE. So if you do a Dars-e-Nizami course, then you can't say that I hold a PhD in Islam. Yes, you should still be studying more. It's just a foundation for you to know that I've studied this. Now I can go out to go to the teachers, study with different teachers. And that's another thing. Don't just stick to one teacher as well.
Explore.
Yes, explore as well. Stick to one teacher in terms of that you always seek advice from. But as for the rest, you may seek advice from them. Nobody's stopping you. But you should visit other teachers also.
Because every teacher has their own teaching style.
Has their own teaching style.
So that's that then. How long...
It's not tasawwuf, because in tasawwuf we stick with one.
Yeah.
Yes. So we don't want to
no pick and choose there.
Yeah.
So in terms of the actual syllabus, right? People say it's watered down. I personally don't think it's watered down. I think if we relate it to the day and age that we're living in, I think it's fine. Like if you were to come out and say that we're teaching a syllabus with, for example, books like Umur Amma and stuff like that. How many people are actually going to do that? They're not, are they?
They're not going to do it.
And it's not... Could you say it's not really part of the syllabus? It's like an extra. So it's more like where you want to go specifically into a field where you don't really need it. What you really need is something basic like Shara Qaida and stuff. So majority
of the time in this day and age, you'll probably just go over people's heads anyway.
It wouldn't even make sense.
It wouldn't even make sense. But if you're going into something like debates, then it'll help you. Then it'll definitely help you, because.
But then that's more like a specialized
yes.
path, that an avenue that you take. So in terms of the actual syllabus, where do we stop at taking books out from it? Like, people till this day say, why do we study mantiq? Why do we study falsafa? Why?
Sometimes I say leave these books in, even if it's as an introduction to these books, just so that when it becomes easy for you to access the books of the past ulama, because they use these terms.
Right.
So therefore,
But do you not think that mantiq actually helps in real life? I think it does.
Mantiq does help in real life, but not everybody is Yusha. So it does help, but where are you going to be thinking about Qiyas Istisnai? Huh? Are you going to be thinking
I'm
about
at least going to use my Sughra and Kubra.
Sughra
at the very basic.
Yes. But only everybody understand that Shakli Awwal and go along with it.
Yeah.
But everything built on that, other than if you're going into something like debates, then yes.
No, my point is not actually use the mantiq in terms of what you're saying, like use the Qiyas Istisnai and the other ones, whatever. I'm saying, like, it opens your mind up. It makes you what they call a critical thinker, where when you read something, you're not just taking it as it is, you're trying to analyze it. So, okay, here the author is saying this, but then here he's saying this, which means this. So you're able to deduce certain things from a text. But if you hadn't studied mantiq, you'd just be, what did they say? Lakir ka fakir. Jaisa likha hai, however it's written, that's gospel.
We just have to be careful of how, it's just from Aristotle as well, isn't it? So we're teaching that, according to many, outdated mantiq. So in terms of your realm of Islam and religious sciences, it might help. But outside of that, it may not.
I think it still does.
It still does. I said some. So it still helps, and you can still relate it, but you still have to adopt on new theories within mantiq as well, modern day theories.
Yeah.
So even though there'll be a base of them in previous mantiq, but you should at least be clued up on them.
Okay, so moving on from mantiq now, we've got that out of the way. It's not really that much of a formal podcast that we're going to say, is studying mantiq haram or should we stay away? Right? All that's been answered. That's for another day. So, apart from mantiq, we have sarf and nahw, where generally we start off with. My personal opinion, the way I teach it, I have a class of students, they're probably watching. I prefer to teach them Arabic first, then teach them sarf and nahw. In terms of basic Arabic, so at least they get an idea of how Arabic sentences are formed, how words are structured and stuff like that, before going into fa'ala 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 fa'ala, whether it's literally just ratta at that point, where they're just doing ratta, they're just memorizing it, they don't have a clue about Arabic.
I teach it like that way. So I teach them basic sarf first, and then with the junior class, then I've taught them spoken Arabic.
Right.
And then we've gone into something like Nahmir.
Okay.
In that manner.
How long is that process?
The only reason that process.
Yeah.
About a year.
About a year.
But
do you think that's a good time?
It's a good time, but they're not. I'm teaching them informally at the same time as well. So they're studying sarf and nahw in a formal manner and spoken Arabic in a formal manner. But there's everything else accompanying it. What's that? The question and answers. Yes, I was picking up on certain topics. So when the first lockdown happened,
right,
I was teaching them the signs of the Day of Judgment.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned that.
I went through all of Ibn Kathir's work, on the signs of the Day of Judgment, and then we picked up on a fair few other subjects. Sometimes even how to take out jinn.
Very interesting.
So they're interested. They get interested in things like this.
Are your kids exorcists? They probably are by now.
Hopefully they'll become it, but I don't want them to go into it.
Right. So yeah, what was I saying? I was saying I personally teach it where we do a bit of Arabic first. Like I teach Minhajul Arabiya. I don't know if you've seen that book or read it. It's taught in India. That's what I studied. And I like the structure of that book. Generally, people teach Medina Arabic Reader. You must have taught Medina Arabic Reader a few times.
I taught the Medina Arabic Reader a couple of times, but I just didn't like the way it was laid out. So I stopped teaching them.
5 lessons. I give up on the book. I personally think it's too much.
It's too much.
per lesson is got too much
I
content?
think the book was called Al-Arabiya Baina Yadayk.
Okay.
Yes. This is being taught as in the courses, especially in Essential Islam. This is something that I would recommend. Zarqani Shah Sahib is in Egypt, so there's a big demand for it in Egypt.
Okay.
So, majority of students that go from here, I think they have like a course that they have to study before they get into the universities.
Right.
So they have to learn Arabic. I'm not sure if it's a 1-year course or 2-year course. This is what they teach in that.
Okay.
Yes. So these books are taught to literally everybody that goes there. So you should tell him to bring them over now. Ship them over. So there's a big demand for them, and they're not cheap books as well. They're expensive books.
Okay, I'll give him that tip to increase his business. So I teach Minhaj al-Arabiya.
Yeah.
Basically, how that works is the author I think in part 1, there's 5 parts to it. In part 1, there's about 30 lessons. There'll be a lesson where he'll tell you a few words and he'll show you a few sentence structures. He won't say it, he won't write it, he'll just be there. That's his method of getting across the Arabic to you. Then the most important thing I believe to learning Arabic is the exercises, where you translate from one language to another. And I think that works wonders. Why I think that works wonders is because now when I see other students who didn't do that, their Arabic is nowhere near to where ours is, because we did that. We were constantly, you ask Hamdani Shah Sahib, he's got about 40 notebooks filled of English to Arabic, Arabic to Urdu. We were in India. Urdu to Arabic. So, ye kutta hai, Arabic mein kya hai? Ye janwar hai, ye hai. Ye this.
The practice helps.
Literally
so
that translation.
The practice helps, but remember one thing as well, that there'll always be a distance between how you're teaching them Arabic and how the Arabs speak Arabic. So it takes a lot. For example,
do you think learning the speaking aspect of Arabic is more important for a first year student than learning how the written Arabic works? I think the spoken Arabic is a marketing skill.
But if you want it to be how modern day Arabic is spoken, for example, I'll give you my own example.
For a Darsi student, does he need to know modern day Arabic to read Nurida?
No.
We're wasting his time.
Wasting his time. But the issue is that because a student might think that he knows Arabic, but when he goes to the Arab lands, he'll get tortured.
I give him a disclaimer.
He'll literally get tortured. Disclaimer at the bottom.
I give him a disclaimer. I tell you, I'm teaching you this Arabic so you can read Arabic books.
So we just class as Quranic Arabic.
Quranic Arabic,
Quranic Arabic. But when you do go, for example, myself, when I've gone to certain countries, Arab countries, it's really, really hard to pick up on the dialect.
But then that's something you can't win over. There's no win situation.
Some of the teachers that you might study with over there, half the time you can't understand what they're saying because of the dialect.
Right.
So, a good friend of mine, Sheikh Babar, you need somebody like him who, by the great Allah grant him such tawfiq that I think the whole of North Africa and then Syria, he knows majority of the dialects.
Wow.
Yes, and you can literally ask him questions of, which dialect is this? You don't need to be a master if you're going to study in that kind of range. But
so what do you think is more important? I personally, and I stress the importance of this, that
I think for the
when
purpose,
you're starting,
if you're doing in the UK, then for the purpose of the UK is just Fusha Arabic, Quranic Arabic, leave it at that.
Then that learning the spoken Arabic, Mufti, I personally think you can't even teach that. You can't teach spoken Arabic.
For somebody
you
like
gotta
you,
live
it's not
there.
possible.
You gotta be
for
there.
Somebody like
you gotta hear it every single day, and you'll pick up. Like I went to Egypt for 1.5 weeks. Mashi. I learned something. I'm going around saying Tayyib, Jayyid. They're like, why are you speaking so formally?
In Morocco, douche. I couldn't figure it out. And then it just means two. Douche.
I'm there. Habibi A'tini al-Walla.
Yeah.
Or something. He's like, just say is, they say, or something like that. And this is something you're gonna pick up throughout. You
have to pick up on it, just like us when we speak. Yes. So, I'm from Yorkshire, but we don't say the T sound properly. Da. Right. It's in the throat. Da.
I say that.
You said that, didn't it? But I said that.
I'm normal.
And then the T sound itself is not the T sound is a D sound. That. Right. Hence why we get, sometimes when we do text messages, we write DAT.
DAT.
Did you start that? I didn't start that. I started the center numbers. So, we have our own dialect and the way we speak, and we cut off words as well. I've just done it now. I cut off the word cut. I say cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this, and for a person from Pakistan, India, maybe it'd be very hard for him to understand what I'm saying. So you have to understand that those scholars or wherever they are, they will have their own dialect. Yeah. For example, when it was a long time ago, it was my first time I sat with Sheikh Umar bin Hafiz.
Okay.
From Yemen.
Hafiz, isn't it? Hafiz?
Hafiz?
I'm not sure.
Wallahu a'lam. It was the first time I was introduced to him, and when I sat with him, and he kept saying Gala, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. So you say Gala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was because the first time you've come across it, and I think I was around about maybe 15 at the time. So it really took me a lot to understand what he was trying to say.
Were you trying to figure out ye kaun sa sigha hai?
Yeah, not sigha, but I think is he saying Gal? Like
Gal as in cheek.
There's Gal as well, but in Punjabi is a swear.
Okay.
Gal is swearing. Yes? It's not a swear word itself. Okay. So you say, it's Gal kadi hai.
All right.
He swore. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's that comparison, isn't it? So you have to, it took a lot, yes? Until there was, I think it was Sheikh Tanveer. Wallahu alam, I can't remember who it was. Sheikh Tanveer, I think he's from High Wycombe. He won't remember it though, because I was young at the time. I asked him, and there was Sheikh Ishtiaq Sari, who's in America at the moment. He was with me at the time. I said to him, what does it mean? Right? Because I think he studied in Yemen.
Okay.
He said the Sheikh is saying Qala.
Qala.
Qacha, that's right. That's right.
That's okay.
Yes. And then you come to the Egyptians, and then Yagug Magug, Yajuj Majuj, Yagug Magug. Haza guys.
Yeah.
So if you listen to Sheikh Jumu'ah, Sheikh
Gumua.
That's another one. Sheikh Gumu'ah. So you'll understand. So but it takes a lot to understand these dialects, and that's just basic. That's just what
normal day-to-day conversation in Arabic. So keeping in mind all these dialects and all these things, that's why I personally came to the conclusion that if you're enrolling in a Dars-e-Nizami course, you should learn written or Quranic Arabic.
Yes.
That's more important, and that will help you.
Don't be in dreamland thinking that you're just gonna go out to the Arab land
you're gonna
and
go
with everybody.
Yeah,
it's gonna be very
you're gonna have a laugh and a joke. That's gonna come with a lot of practice, a lot of time where you'll have to live in that country. You'll have to talk to someone on a day-to-day basis, and then you'll pick up dialects. Most of in Egypt, there was probably 2 people that I met that were speaking Fusha Arabic, that I could understand every word, and what I was saying they couldn't. Apart from that, we just Kam Chalao, where I'd try to say something, he'd barely understand it, but he'd reply, and I'd barely understand it, because that's their slang.
Yes.
And they're going to speak in that slang. That's their normal day-to-day. The Amiya, they call it, right?
Yeah, Amiya. Yeah.
Amiya. So you can't learn that.
One thing what will happen is that generally in the Dars-e-Nizami course, because you're going to go through it, you'll be able to speak on a masala. So for example, the first time I went out, I was able to speak on any fiqh masla or qidah masla or anything like that, anything to do with what we learned in the Dars-e-Nizami. Because you know the terminology, you can phrase the sentences, whatever. But as soon as he went to how's the weather, khalas, finished. Because that vocabulary is out of your brain. Yes?
No, Liza doesn't tell you about the weather, does it?
Tell you about the weather. So you have to, you have to understand what your purpose is really.
Exactly. So I personally, you're agreeing with me,
I agree
right?
with you, yes.
Yeah, we need to send out a joint statement that
get the ulama to sign it.
Get a written statement that when you start into that syllabus of the Dars-e-Nizami, you should concentrate on that Fusha Arabic, the Quranic Arabic, because that is what will aid you in learning, going through the entire syllabus.
I'm speaking in the UK.
In the UK.
I mean, if you're in somewhere else, that's a different.
We're not talking in that
If you're
context.
studying in Syria, Egypt, then you should learn the local language as well, because that's how you're going to.
That's how you're going to talk to people, right? Yeah.
You're going to access the scholars in that manner.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for us in the UK, when we do start, we should start with the Fusha Arabic, the Quranic Arabic. Right, moving on from that. So you do it completely the opposite way. So now let's do a munazara on why you do it that way and why I do it this way, where I teach the Arabic first.
We need to say the Sharaid first.
The Sharaid, Rashidiyah. Anyone got Rashidiyah? Right. So I'd say teach them the Arabic. Say Mufti Sahib, I did it your way though. I went through your way and I thought that this would work better. I've gone in, say for example, I sit in a classroom and the teacher tells me, Kalime ki 3 qisme hai. Kalima has 3 types, ism, fi'l and harf. I don't have a clue what he's on about. I don't know what an ism is. I don't know what a fi'l is. I'm just learning types. I'll go through it all, and when I say I don't understand, you'll understand it. How many times have you heard that? You'll understand it later on. To combat me saying that to my students, that you'll understand it later on everything. There's certain things where I have to say, come on, it's too soon for you, or it's too soon for me to tell you what Musnad and Musnad Ilayh is. We're only learning Zaydun Rajulun or something like that. It's too soon right now. So you learn that later on. But when I was doing it, it was like, you'll understand it later. And it took a good 5, 6, 7, 8 months for me to make sense. Okay, this is what Ism, Fail and Harf actually means. When you see it written.
The best way to do it is to just relate it to English. So, I mean, when you say Ism, you say noun. So at least they got something to relate to, but there might be technicality. For example, I always say to my students...
Asma'i Af'al.
Asma'i
in
Af'al.
English, what's that?
A verbal noun. Then you have to be careful with that, because they might think it's a verbal noun that you spoke. So it's just one of those things that the terminology is sometimes tricky, but there are certain things that you do have to say. For example, normally when I teach the kids and I teach them Shashaksam, the six types, it's a case that they won't understand it, because when I say that Sulasi Mujarrad is that which has 3 huruf asliya without any extra letters, but then I tell them Fa'altu is still Sulasi Mujarrad.
Mufti Sahab, I confused the student in that. They were like, Shah Sahab, what are you doing? Are you sure you're saying? They were asking me, are you sure you're saying it right? Okay, it doesn't have any huruf zaida, but this does. Why is it not? Then all I was saying was, you'll understand later.
In certain things you do have to say, but if the teacher is constantly saying Ism Fail Harf, you'll understand it later on. Yes, Huruf Asli, you'll understand it later on. Then you got
I might as well start later on.
You got problem. But there are certain things like Sulasi Mujarrad, Sulasi Mazid, Shashaksam as we call them. These have to be understood later on, because why? Look, you might explain it then.
It's not going to make sense though.
It won't make sense. But what's easier? As soon as you teach in the babs, what you're going to say that, look, Sulasi Mujarrad has X amount of babs. Yes? Now,
it has to be on this measure.
If he says Bab Daraba Yadribu, he straight away knows that it's Sulasi Mujarrad. So he doesn't have to think about, has it got Huruf Asliya in it, Zaida in it? He doesn't need to think about that. So sometimes you just have to have that trust in that teacher.
Yeah, and obviously it takes time. It's not going to be, you're not going to wake up one night knowing perfect Arabic and you can know all the babs and everything. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's a procedure that you have to go through. So in terms of the Arabic, I teach the Arabic first, so they have a basic understanding of certain words and how it works. Then when you go into Sarf and Nav, I personally think it makes a lot more sense, and this is tried and tested for me. It works for me, and it's worked for the students that I've taught and that I teach. I'm going to stick to that. You stick to teaching Sarf first and then teaching Arabic. Maybe that works for you.
I have a basic plan, but I'm not that type of teacher that just stick to that basic plan. I'll assess the children. I'll explore. No, I assess the children. And that does not mean that because I'm teaching in this manner that I've set out, for example, teaching Sarf first. But if there's even one child in there that I feel is not understanding it, right, I will help him in a different manner. Yes. Or for example, what will happen, like I did as well, where I thought that the children were switching off, we put spoken Arabic in there.
Right.
And
to make it a bit interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So we do that.
Okay, so that's that bit done. Now moving on to the actual Sarf and Nahv. So I'm going through the actual syllabus, right?
Okay.
We're on to Sarf and Nahv. Sarf and Nahv, books that I teach are obviously the one that my brother wrote, Sarful Jilani, and I think that does wonders. Yeah, I'm a good salesman. Yeah, I'm selling my own book here.
I've still got a few copies if you want.
Yeah, so I teach Sarful Jilani. Thereafter, and Sarful Jilani with Ta'lilat Khadimiyya and Abu Sarf. That's an aid for them with the Gardans, because when we wrote the book, we thought, what's the point just copying the Gardans out there, putting it? Just refer to that book. So use that book as well. After that, Mufti, I think that's enough for Sarf. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I just teach Sarf without a book. So I don't use a book.
So only you can do that. We're helping other people.
My children don't use a book as well. So the thing with here is as well, you have to understand sometimes using books is it's not practical. So for example, all of the asbaq.
That's why Mufti Sahab has so many copies of our book, because he doesn't use them.
No, just Arkani Shah Sahab gave me a whole load. So the thing is, look, especially you have to look at the age as well. But if you're teaching children Dars-e-Nizami, then for me, right, is that rather than them using books, and having notes. I'm against notes. Where the teacher prepares the notes and gives them to the student. That's spoon feeding.
I make PowerPoints as a balance.
Not all the time though. Don't do it all the time.
No, on certain things. So for example, if I'm teaching fiqh, I bullet point certain
then it's
things
fine.
like that. But I'm completely against PowerPoint and giving notes. I'm against children making notes. I don't like it. When I'm talking,
I will probably write.
Listen.
I'll probably write on the board, but I try to teach my children as much languages as they can.
Right.
Yeah. So for example, they learn sarf in Urdu and he's explained in English.
What?
Yes.
What was that?
So they learn Arabic in Urdu, but it's explained in English.
Subhanallah.
So I've just taken out 3 languages in one.
Do they not find that difficult?
No. And that way they've learned Urdu. Now all of my children can read Urdu.
Okay.
So all of them can read. They know the Quran anyway, so they know Arabic in that regards with the harakat.
Yeah.
But in terms of Urdu, now they're reading Urdu.
Okay.
Yeah. So it just balances. It just like killing 2 birds with 1 stone basically. I don't want students to come at the age of 20, 30 when they realize, I needed Urdu. Is that right, Umar? Yeah. See, Umar knows. So some students will come back and say, I need to access Sayyidi Ala Hazrat's book, but I don't know Urdu. I can't teach him Urdu at that point now, can I?
It's a bit late.
So when you do it this way, and how is it done? How I learn it? Ustaz Sahab used to write Surf Bahi on the board, and I used to just copy it. And Ustaz Sahab didn't speak English, so they used to just explain it however best they could to us. I used to memorize it. Yeah. But now obviously I teach it, so I explain in English to the children. But as they've gone through it, they've picked up Urdu. Not just with Sarf, but when they did Nahmir is taught in Urdu. As in when I say taught in Urdu, they write it in Urdu, explain it in English. Okay. And that way they know how to write Urdu.
That's 4 languages. Nahmir is in Farsi.
So
you translate it from Farsi to Urdu to Urdu to
explain in English.
Explain it in English. I don't want to be part of your classes. I'm going to be studying 5 languages every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's just something,
a credit to your students if they're still there.
They're still there. The thing is it becomes the norm. It actually becomes the norm for them that for that section. Now they finish Nahmir. Now that all's gone. They know Urdu. I feel comfortable that they can build on the Urdu on their own accord.
Okay.
Yes. So therefore, there's no point me touching Urdu. Now once they're doing Shara Me'atu Amil now. Yes. Okay. And they're doing Nurulida. So therefore now what they're reading right now, and they're going to start Aqidah Tahawiyah. I'm just trying to put this so they stay interested as well.
Yeah.
So therefore they're doing these books. Shara Me'atu Amil takes most of their time. But the thing is that they actually reading without Arab now. But they don't need to do Urdu anymore.
Yeah.
They've knocked that hurdle out of the way, haven't they?
So at least they won't complain 25 years down the line.
Yes. At least they've got a basic
I'll
thing.
be regretful that they didn't learn.
I mean, even if somebody did Nahmir just in Urdu,
they'd pick up something.
They'll pick up a lot. Yeah. I know I did. Okay,
so in terms of Sarf now specifically, not Nahv, in terms of Sarf, how much Sarf? That's a big question. How much? Kitna? Like you go on Sarf, you can go up to Maramul Kalam, not Maramul Kalam.
I told you the truth, we don't do the books.
So how much then? Without books, how much?
I can't explain it to you because you'll have to do it to explain it. So the way Ustaz Mufti Fazal Sahib,
so like
Ustaz Sahib taught
if I was to throw a sigha out, you like qi.
Yeah.
Should you be able to answer that question or not? I'd say no.
I mean, one of my other teachers, I won't mention his name, used to say, don't put him in this jungle. He used to call Sarf a jungle.
It is?
Yeah. There's ikhtilaf on that as well.
Can you
the word key,
all right,
key, like you say, wakinar, zabanar. Just the word key, does it have the ha of sakta at the end of it or not? Ki. Yes?
Okay.
So does it have the ha of sakta at the end of it? Because you can't just have one word in Arabic.
A letter,
yeah. So therefore the ha of sakta comes. Yes? So, I mean, where are you going to take it? It's a jungle, isn't it? To be precise, it's a jungle. But basic thing is, right, your basic set of gardans from Fail Mazi all the way down to Sifa Mushabbaha, the Ism, you've got that. Then you go on to the Babs then, don't you? Salasi Mujarrad Babs, Salasi Mazid Fi Babs, and then the Rubai. And that's another thing as well. Rubai are easy, you just give the first 2 really. Right? That's only one Fa'la la and then give the Fa'lul and that's it. You don't. The rest are really rare.
Yeah.
And they don't even, I don't even let the kids memorize
Would you
them.
say at least go through them so they know it's there?
Yeah, it's there.
In a way where
it's in
they
the
do
notes,
get
isn't
confused
it?
somewhere.
It's in their notes.
Right.
Yes. So it's there, and they should memorize it. Just memorize it, however they memorize it. But it won't something that we'll emphasize as teachers.
Because you know yourself, it's
Yes.
going to come up once in a blue moon.
Yes.
So don't stress it that
And
much.
that blue moon sometimes doesn't come out as well. So you have to understand. Now, after that is the rules. And basic rules, I only teach 7 rules. You don't need to go through that Kanuncha book.
Yes.
Yes.
72 of them.
Yeah. and the language is difficult on that.
Yeah.
It's in Punjabi, isn't it? Yes, it's kind of. I never studied it. I never studied
Wow,
it.
yaar se badal denge or something.
I never
something.
I never studied Kanuncha with Ustad Sahab.
Okay.
Because Ustad Sahab teaches it completely differently. He's
Kanuncha, by the way, tell them what it is. They're thinking, what's this?
I never studied it, so I don't know. The Kanuncha is a book just based on rules, principles of
changes
of
which
occur.
in words.
But Ustad Sahab did it with their own teacher, which we call Imam Sarf. Ustad Hashim is still alive.
Okay.
Lives in Lahore. You can donate to that. We're actually building him a house.
MashaAllah.
So you can inshallah donate towards that cause if you want. We've never done a live appeal, and this is not a live appeal.
The hotline is...
So he's very old. So his method was that you go through Sarf in such a manner that you make your own notes and you make your own portfolio. So once you've done your rules, and that's about 7 rules, and the seven rules for each one of the Hafta Qasam.
Right, yeah.
So he won't really have rules. Then you might go to
So that's
Mahmuz.
47 then.
Yes, that's it. You're done. You're finished.
Yeah.
And the easy, half of those rules you're not even going to use as well. It's just basic rules. You go through them, and after that, you just apply them.
So in terms of Sarf, obviously you don't teach the book. I'd say from what I would teach is I teach Sarful Jilani and I teach Ta'lilat and Abwab together, and that's it.
After that, for example, if the the student has done Nahmir and maybe a few other books, Shamit, Amil, whatever, I might just bring them back to Sarf books.
That Ilmu Sigha and stuff like that. Would
Like
you still
Ilmu
teach
Sigha,
that?
but we just translate it. There's no explanation.
No, but I've already taught that.
Yeah.
I've already taught them
Yeah.
everything that's Ilmu Sigha.
The only thing is
that
the only reason why we'll do it is just to go through the book. That you say that
Okay.
we've done the book. And the second thing is that sometimes in these books there's these certain rare things
that you'll only find in that book.
But what we tell the student is, like we told Umar to do this, is to add it to his portfolio. Yes? Where he might be something new that I have not told him, but it's come up, and
So
then
add it into your
he'll
notes.
add it into your notes.
Right.
Yeah? But that's how Ustaz Hashim did it.
Okay.
Because the way he taught it is really, if you've done the way Ustaz Hashim teaches Sarf, you've done it, the whole syllabus basically of Sarf. You don't need to open those books. Hence why when we just do it for the sake of reading the book, but it'll just be a translation.
Yeah.
Ustaz
It's
Hashim
like a
just teaches
recap.
translation, yeah.
Like a recap.
Yeah,
or
like a
revision.
recap of it.
So in terms of, right, that's how much you teach in Sarf, and I'd say that's how much I teach in Sarf. In terms of what's the benefits of Sarf? So one thing we'll do is we'll go through the benefits of the science and why they're there in the first place. That someone might come think, why do I need to do ratta or fa'ala? When am I ever going to use that? So what are the benefits of Sarf? Why do we need to study Sarf? Actually, not even benefits. Why is it compulsory to study Sarf?
I mean, you don't have to do the rata on it. There may be students that don't have to do the memorizing of those patterns. It might just be a case that they understand it.
Right.
Yes. And that's good enough as well. You don't have to exactly memorize it and read it. But the benefits of it is that majority of the students that we might get, like we was talking earlier on, they don't have a flow in Nazara. So it helps with reading the Quran better as well. So that's the benefit I look at. Yes.
Right.
Other than that,
no, in terms of the actual science itself,
The science
when do you use
itself,
Sarf and why do you need to know
I mean,
Sarf?
for anything really, if you're going to start into a language, then you need to know what the patterns of the words are in that language. Yes, how words are formed in that language.
Yeah.
So you need to know that on a basic level. So once you know that, it builds your base in that language. But because it'll become the norm to you, doing such, it'll become the norm. But you'll ask yourself the question, I mean, what's the benefit of it? The benefit will come when you read the Quran and you get stuck somewhere and you don't know what the Mada is.
Yeah.
Yes?
I need to look up the root
Like there
word.
was one person who was talking about Ahmad,
Okay.
and instead of saying Hamida Yahmadu, he was saying Hamada Yuhmadu.
Oh.
Yes.
What Bob's that?
I don't know what to ask me. Right? And then the one person who said, know the word, I think the word was shukha. Yes,
Okay.
shukha. And he said that shukha and sheikh have the same mother.
How did you get to that?
I don't know. I don't know how he got to
Which
the same.
Qanun did the ya drop from?
I don't know. But he said they're the same mother. So the issue, I mean, no blame upon that person who said it. It's just maybe he may have something else in his mind. But
And that's the problem with that is if you get the madda confused, the root origin
Yes.
of the word, you're going to be lost in the meaning.
Yes.
You're never going to get to
You're
the
never
actual
gonna get
meaning.
to
So
it.
that's another important benefit of sarf where
and generally the benefit is it protects you from making mistakes on words.
on sighas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like
For
a lot of
example,
people say tarjima.
ashara
Yeah.
yushiru. Yeah, not ashara yashiru.
Yes.
So stuff like that, because you know what the gardan is, what bab it's from, then you won't make that mistake of
Or like-
do I put a zabara here, do I put a pesh here?
Istighfar, astaghfar.
Yeah,
You know, astaghfar common.
commonly
Yes.
everyone that's how
But
they
you
say
learn that it's istighfar.
istifal. Yeah. So that's a benefit of sarf. Now moving on from sarf. Oh wow, Sav, it's 10 o'clock.
Is it?
Yeah, it's
MashaAllah.
been 2 hours. We'll leave it here. We'll leave it here, lads. We'll let you go home, don't worry. Yeah, we'll finish here at sarf. So inshallah, next time we do this, we'll carry on from sarf.
We
We've
might
still
finish
got
this in 8 years.
8 years. Yeah, we might as well start teaching here. Yeah, so we'll finish here at sarf, and inshallah, next time we get together, we'll carry on from sarf, and we've still got
Inshallah.
a load of sciences to get through, inshallah. I hope you've benefited from this. Sorry, I'm not looking at you. So you have made me benefit. I hope the viewers have benefited from this. If there are any more questions, I see there are questions here. Inshallah, we will try our best to cover them. And I personally think every student should watch this podcast. So they're there. We've got so many things to cut through. Like, for example, one of the main things is the sincerity. Yeah, we've not even talked about that yet. We've not even got to that. And how important it is to be I'm not going to say Sufi, like how important it is to have tasawwuf as together in line with your other sarf and nahv and your other academic sciences, and keep them together. Inshallah, those will be covered in a podcast next time, where Mufti Sahib will be asking me the questions rather than me asking the questions.
We'll turn it on,
Inshallah. So that's the end of the podcast. Jazakallah. Please leave your comments or anything. Follow Ihya Sunnah on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Like, share and subscribe. Assalamu alaikum.